So I was looking around YouTube a little while ago, and I saw that there really weren't many videos on how to counter all the classes as a soldier in TF2. Well, probably because all you have to do is left click on them a few times and they're dead. After I was done looking around, I decided that I wanted to make a video on how to counter every class as a soldier in the game. This video will cover two things. 1. How to fight each class in the game as the soldier. 2. Weapon recommendations and how to utilize them, to some extent. Now before this starts, I would like to clarify that I am forming all of my suggestions and all of my opinions based on my experience playing soldier. It's perfectly fine to disagree with me or any points I make in the video. You can have your own opinion on the topic. I don't really care. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's go.
Man, your skull's so soft, you're making this easy.
The Virgin Boston boy that runs fast and dodges faster than my Uncle Ted dodging's alimony payment. Like all the classes, it depends on the guy that's playing the scout. Most scouts tend to flank around, try to get key picks. Well, other than that, they're pretty easy to deal with. Now it's time for the pros and the cons when fighting the scout as the soldier. First things first, the scout has 125 HP, meaning 2 good rocket hits can shut him down and send him back to the respawn room to contemplate his life decisions. The scout is also somewhat easy to predict. They tend to run in a zigzag, or they just run straight at you. Alright, now we're moving on to the cons of fighting a scout as a soldier. Firstly, scouts would most likely maintain a medium distance from you, staying on top of the high ground, jump around, etc. Otherwise, they would get demolished. Secondly, scouts are pretty hard to hit. Scouts that jump around like that ground has fucking AIDS or something avoid most splash damage and other forms of damage that you try to inflict on them. Lastly, he's fast. You're slow, you fat shit. This pretty much makes it easier for the scout to get the drop on you and flank you easily. Overall, fighting a scout is pretty easy if you just, well, shoot your rocket launcher at him. But if a scout is jumping around erratically, try to predict where he would land so you can get damage off of him. You can also utilize your secondary, if you have one, to pick the scout off if you have no more rockets left in reserve or in your clip. But still, fighting a scout is somewhat easy if you know what you're doing.
Dominated, hippie, get a job!
Most of the soldiers that you will be fighting against will be somewhat competent, but as long as you see him before he can see you, you should be fine. Also, it's worth noting that most soldiers like to jump when shooting at you, so use this to your advantage and try to send them flying in the air for either an air shot or you pull out your secondary to finish him off. Alright, let's move on to the pros of fighting a soldier as a soldier. First of all, if you have more rockets than the soldier you're fighting against, that basically means you got the kill. It pretty much explains itself, so I don't really need to elaborate any further. Secondly, being behind a soldier who is unprepared to fight you and is not even aware of your existence is basically another kill to add to the scoreboard. But once again, this applies to almost every single class. Alright, let's move on to the cons now. First of all, any soldier with good game sense can instantly shut you down. If he knows that you're about to kill him or his teammates, then he'll try to put a stop to that. And lastly, you both have the same amount of health and speed. An altercation between you and the soldier you're fighting against will result in either one of you dying or both of you dying. But this also depends on the loadout that you or the other soldier are running. There's not too much to say about fighting soldiers. As long as you're able to get the drop on them, you'll be fine. But like I said, most soldiers are competent, so choose your fights carefully. Oh boy, Pyro, huh? Pyro is soldier's counter, but that highly depends on the Pyro. But there are two different kinds of Pyros. The first kind of Pyro is the guy that hasn't figured out how to air blast, and the second kind of Pyro does know how to air blast. Alright, now let's move on to the pros of fighting a Pyro. First of all, Pyros are somewhat predictable. Most Pyros like to set you on fire, air blast you, and then pull out whatever secondary that they are using at that time. This can be used to your advantage by predicting when the Pyro will air blast. When the Pyro fumbles that air blast and you didn't fire a rocket, that would be your chance to get some damage off of him. Lastly, you have 25 more HP than the Pyro. So that means you can sacrifice more damage than him ever since you have 200 HP and he only has 175. Okay, it's the cons for fighting a Pyro now. First of all, anytime a competent pyro sees a projectile coming their way, they would always try to reflect it. If you see a pyro and he has his flamethrower out, maybe reconsider firing your rocket at him. Lastly, if you do kill the pyro, but he sets you on fire, you're gonna have to deal with the afterburn that he leaves. And chances are, you're probably gonna be below 30 HP. So, call up Jesus, tell him you're on your way, then die. Now, fighting an air blast happy pyro is really aggravating, but hey, don't worry, I have a solution just for you. Just pull out your shotgun. Any kind of shotgun is absolutely amazing when fighting pyros. They can't even do much other than run away or fire their secondary at you. I have not seen a lot of soldiers use the shotgun because, well, gunboats and the banners just exist. But I am 100% not trying to say that nobody uses it, because a lot of people still do. Alright, with that out of the way, let's move on.
I'll notify your next of kin that you sucked!
Demoman is kind of terrifying to fight against right next to Heavy. He's either a Pipe Lord, a Sticky Spammer, or a Demo Knight. Dealing with a Demo Knight is easy ever since all they have is a melee weapon and you have a fucking rocket launcher. But Sticky Spammers are arguably the worst people to fight against as a soldier, ever since they have 8 bombs loaded and can almost fire faster than your rocket launcher. But on behalf of the demo mains, it's fun to Sticky Spam, it's just not fun to be on the receiving end of it. Okay, let's just move on to the pros and cons. To start off, you have more health than him. Like the Pyro, the Demoman has 175 HP compared to the soldier's 200. Lastly, for the pros, pipes are harder to hit and Sticky Spam is harder to achieve up close. But it also depends on the demo's skill and aim. Also, if you're in front of Demoman practically kissing him and he shoots a pipe grenade at you, he also deals damage along with you. Alright, we're at the cons of fighting Demoman now. The first con is Sticky Spam. I mean, of course it's not fun to be on the receiving end of a Sticky Spam, but you could, like, potentially kill him. It's just, don't even bother. Okay, this last one is a real con. 2 pipes from the Demoman can kill you instantly. Try to dodge the demo's pipes by either rocket jumping or moving erratically. Alright, we're done with demo, let's move on.
I promise you, pain without end.
Heavy is without a doubt the hardest class to counter ever since he's just so goddamn tanky. A Heavy right up in your face would automatically mean that you're heading back to the respawn room. But don't dwell on it too much cause 4 clean rocket hits can usually take out a Heavy. But if that isn't the case, then pull out your secondary or your melee weapon if you're feeling ballsy. Alright, now we're on to the pros of fighting a Heavy. First of all, Heavy is slower than you. Even though Soldier is the second slowest class in the game, he's still faster than Heavy. On top of that, Soldier can also rocket jump, which adds extra mobility for him. Last but not least, getting the drop on an unprepared Heavy usually means that you won the altercation. If the Heavy isn't revved up and is unaware that you're behind him, it's usually an easy kill. Alright, we're on the cons of the Heavy now. The first con of fighting a Heavy is that he has more health than you. Heavy has 300 HP, when overhealed he has 450 HP, which essentially requires you to unload an entire clip onto him if you want him dead. Lastly, any minigun that the Heavy is carrying can instantly shut you down in a second. You're probably not going to do too much damage because 1, he has 300 health, and 2, he most likely has a sandwich. There isn't much you can do against a Heavy other than just shoot your rocket launcher at him, but if you are fighting a competent Heavy that's been pissing you off since the start of the match, consider using a shotgun or a different rocket launcher.
Y'all just got drafted into my war.
Fighting an engineer highly depends on if the NG is by his sentry or not. If he's not by his sentry, well then it's easy pickings. But if he is by a sentry, that's where problems start to form. The stock rocket launcher can take out a level 3 sentry with 3 rockets. But on the other hand, the direct hit can take out a level 3 sentry with just 2 rockets. The direct hit is a fantastic weapon for destroying sentry nests and classes with 125 health. Utilize the direct hit by destroying sentry nests and killing low health classes. Moving on, let's go to the pros and cons of fighting an engineer as a soldier. First things first, an engineer not by his sentry is almost always going to result in a kill. I know there's a chance the engineer can kill you if he has good aim, but this kind of ties into the next point that I'm about to make. The last pros when fighting an engineer as a soldier is that the engineer is more vulnerable when you're fighting him up close because you have a rocket launcher and he only has a shotgun and a pistol. I mean, which do you think does more damage? Moving on from the pros to the cons now, an engineer by a sentry will almost always result in you dying. It kind of depends on where the sentry is. Like, if the sentry's around the corner, you can just corner peek it and try to destroy it. Or if it's just in a wide open spot, then you're dead. The last con is that the engineer's short circuit can nullify any projectile coming its way. Your primary source of damage is obviously going to be rocket damage, and so the short circuit completely nullifying that kind of makes it harder to kill the engineer. Of course, if you do have a shotgun, you can obviously pull it out and shoot him and he can't do jack shit about it, but sometimes you're probably either 1, not going to have ammo for the shotgun, 2, not running the shotgun, or 3, forget you have a shotgun. Depending on what the engineer is running as his loadout and where his sentry is, don't worry about him too much. Let your demo or a heavy take care of the sentry if you can't really do anything about it.
I am a god.
Medic is by far the easiest class to counter. Just left click on him a few times and you and your team don't have to worry about the other team pushing far. This gives you and your team more time to set up, like Engie's placing sentries, your medic building Uber, and your team respawning. If you do so happen to see a medic not really being protected by who he's pocketing, go in for the kill. Trust me, you'll be saving you and your team more time. Starting off with the pros of fighting a medic as a soldier, he's a very easy class to kill if he's left alone or his team is just not paying attention to him. This can also depend on if the medic is competent enough to save himself from a messy situation, but chances are you're probably gonna kill him before he can get any damage off of you. For the last pro, as I mentioned earlier, when the medic is dead, it prevents the enemy team from pushing up. They rely on the medic's source of Uber so that they can effectively push up and try to take the objective, push the payload, etc. Now there's really only one con for the medic that I can think of when fighting him as a soldier, and that's if the medic is by their pocket and you kill them, most likely you'll go down with the medic. It depends on the class that he's pocketing, so if he's like pocketing a heavy, then you're pretty much dead. Overall, a medic can't really do much when he meets a soldier face to face. Medic relies on his pocket in order to kill anything that challenges him. Okay, let's move on.
All rockets, no brains, eh, mate?
Sniper is another one of those classes that are terrifying to fight against if they're competent. Peeking down their sightline for more than a few seconds would almost always result in you getting that sweet 15-second respawn time wait. But even if you do peek down his sightline and gamble your head, there's still a chance for him to miss. Soldiers should take that opportunity and try to kill the sniper any way he can. We're moving on to the pros and cons of fighting a sniper now, and like the engineer and scout, he's at 125 HP. This means 2 clean rocket hits can kill him up close. The second pro is that the sniper is not exactly powerful when in up close fights. When threatened up close, snipers tend to just pull out their melee or whatever secondary that they're using. This last pro depends on the sniper, but some snipers don't use their SMG. It's either that they're not using an SMG or they're using the Girardi, Razorback, or Cozy Camper. And ever since you're playing soldier, you can tank most melee hits. Alright, moving on to the cons now, and the first con is that the Girardi Bushwhacker snipers can shut you down instantly if you're not careful enough. The Girardi Bushwhacker combo deals 195 damage, you have 200 HP, and that leaves you with 5 HP. That makes you vulnerable to all the other classes. The last con is that a good sniper can completely have a lane on lockdown. To counteract that, avoid going down that lane and try to catch him by surprise. Like Medic, there's not much a sniper can do against a soldier when he's right up in your face. Unless the sniper is a relatively far distance away from the soldier, he cannot kill him easily up close.
Maybe your colleagues will send a man next time.
Last but not least, we have the Spy. Pretty much all of the support classes can't do much against the soldier, but a good spy can be a detriment to you and your team. Constantly being backstabbed, having your Uber dropped, it can be frustrating. When playing as a soldier and you see a spy and you're not doing anything important, prioritize the spy before you can backstab any of your teammates. Moving on to the pros and cons now. First of all, the spy has 125 HP. Yeah, you already know, I've said this like 4 times. And lastly, spies tend to die pretty easily. And it's not just because of their health, but it's because of how obvious he's being or how paranoid the people on your team are. Moving on from the pros to the cons, spies prioritize key picks. Heavies, soldiers, medics, NGs, etc. And lastly, out of all of those key classes, a medic, soldier, and a heavy is what the spy is gonna prioritize. Like all the support classes, spies are very easy to take care of, but a good spy can easily fuck you and your team up. Now that we've covered all the classes, we'll be talking about weapons to use fitting for the match that you're playing in. For example, say your team doesn't have a medic, you might want to utilize the buff banner or the conch for an offensive playstyle. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's begin. This is the most common launcher to use ever since it's very reliable. The stock rocket launcher can output very good damage at close to mid-range distances. The same also goes for the original, but the rockets come from the center rather than the side. Another thing that's cool about the stock rocket launcher is that it can be used both offensively and defensively, which is why this gun is awesome other than its reliability and good damage. As I mentioned when covering how to counter Pyro, the stock shotgun is a great weapon for when either you're out of rockets, a Pyro's right in your face, dealing with that one annoying scout, etc. This also applies to any other shotgun that the soldier can equip. Not much else to say other than it's a great backup weapon, and more people should use it. I said earlier that the direct hit can destroy a level 3 sentry with just 2 rockets. This can demonstrate how powerful the direct hit really is. It fires way faster than stock and has a 25% damage bonus. It's also worth mentioning that this is the weapon for airshotting, but unfortunately you do sacrifice splash damage. This weapon forces you to hit a direct hit on a target, almost forcing you to test your aim and be confident in your ability to hit things. With that being said, I recommend that you use this weapon offensively. This is mainly just to deal with sentries, spies, and medics. A direct hit can also be used with any offensive banner, like the buff banner and the conch. Probably one of the only good soldier melee weapons other than the disciplinary action. This weapon gives you a speed boost when you're at low HP, which makes this the perfect weapon for when you need to get out of a messy situation. Although you're marked for death, it's still a great melee weapon and is used by most soldiers. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Hopefully the newer players that have watched this learn something new and will take this video into consideration when playing TF2. Once again, all my opinions were formed based on my experience playing soldier. You can have different views on whatever I had to say previously. Thanks for watching the video in its entirety, it really means a lot. Alright, enough talking from me, goodbye.